Okay, it's shared on Zoom. Thank you. So what we want to do is set our physics layers. We have some objects that we want to affect other objects, and some we don't want to impact others. So we actually have the capability to put these things on different layers, different physics layers, so they're not touching each other. So it's kind of the same as a Photoshop layer, you know, where you can turn that layer on or off and see that stuff or not see that stuff. And we want to use this to put our like objects, you know, together. So if they're going to impact each other, they need to be in the same layer. So let's find our tags and layers. If you notice, we're looking at the inspector and we're on our apple tree, and the layer area, sure, that's fine. The layer component that we're looking for is right past that tag. Remember that tag where we set that our apples were apples. Now I'm going to get my apple tree component here in the inspector. Here's my tag, and I'm going to go to the layers. Now I want to add a layer. So it's teeny. Can you see it? We want to go down. If you notice, the first layer that we can add is layer 8. All of the layers before that are grayed out. We are not able to affect those. So like layer 4 is the water layer. Layer 5 is the UI layer. So our layer 8 is going to be our apple tree layer. So let's make that be our apple tree. Then layer 9 is going to be an apple layer. And layer 10 is going to be our basket that we're using to catch our apples. Now we should be able to just start using that stuff. Let's see if we can find it. So in your Unity menu, choose Edit, Project Settings, and then we want to change our physics. Now, see this kind of grid thing? Kind of one of those old map deals, you know, how far is it to get from this city to this city? Well, we have a connecting point here of these different layers. So we could say our apple tree layer is coming across here, and our apple tree layer is coming down here. So whatever is checked is something that's going to be impacted in that layer. So we can change that a little bit. Let's fix it. What we want to do is we want our apple to not be affected by our apple tree and our apple layer.
Under project settings, what was it?
Project settings, oops, sorry, edit, settings, physics. Now what we're doing there is we're saying that our apple is going to collide with the basket. It's going to be impacted by the physics of the basket, but it's not going to be impacted by the apple tree or other apples. So you might not want it that way. You might like those apples bouncing off of each other. So if you like that, you could leave that box checked if you wanted them to impact each other. But let's run it and see how that changes things. So remember, that's at the entire game level. My tree's still way up high in the air. Acted weird about it going back and forth, but
mine's still dropping apples weirdly.
Is it?
Yeah. Like it's shooting them.
Shooting them? What's that?
It was just straight up dropping them. I'm not sure where. Like, we haven't seen the playoffs train before.
Where they're coming from, yeah, because they're just kind of coming from out of space there. So if you have trouble like that, so like for me with my apple tree, when I look at my scene window, I'm not even seeing it. Find my apple tree here, and I'm going to press my, double click it to find my tree there. Now my tree, my position has moved a little bit, And remember, we started with our XYZ coordinates of 0 on our tree to put it kind of in the center of our scene. So I'm going to change that, and I'm going to run mine and see if it looks a little bit better. Yeah, I'm back to the middle. And then our apples should be dependent on where our tree is, that those positional coordinates for our tree as to where they're coming from. So if they're coming from someplace else, we'll look at them here in a minute. As long as you're getting some to spit out, we're good. Now, the next thing we're going to add to our game is to make the apples not keep falling. They're just dropping like crazy. So let's look at our Apple C# code. From my Apple script. Now I've got a good sign. I'm open with Visual Studio 2017. It didn't do any weird things. Go to any old versions. Is yours working okay? Hopefully they'll all do that. Take it a while for it to open. Now, when we look at our Apple script, it's all brand new. Some of you that aren't in C# aren't seeing the color-coded curly braces. Do you want those? Don't care? Okay. You know, if you do, then we'll find them for you. Yeah, I kind of like them. Now, for this script, do what?
They're helpful.
Aren't they? So you've got yours, huh? All right, for this script, we're going to be working with our Apple objects. And we hadn't really had to do a lot with them yet. Our tree script is kind of taking care of spitting those apples out. But now we're going to actually control their behavior a little bit. So let's start out with a variable here that's going to be a float. And we're going to call it bottom Y. So this is going to be the position of the bottom of the screen on our y-axis. So we're going to start out setting it to -20, say kind of about the same as we set our side-to-side boundaries to keep our tree on the screen. Now we're going to try to keep those apples from dropping off the bottom. So pretty simple for us. In our update, we want to check to see where we are. So we're going to do transform position of our Y, and we want to check to see if it's less than the bottom of our Y. And if so, we're going to destroy that apple. So I'm going to put a comment in there like that. If we are past the bottom, destroy the apple. Now, some of us have a lot more experience with C# than others. The fact that this variable is static up here matters a lot. This static variable means that there will be only one of these for all apples. So that means instead of having each apple object having its own specific value for the bottom of the screen, we're just going to have one instance of the bottom of the screen that's shared by all of the Apple objects. So it doesn't impact really our code very much, but it would depending on what we were doing. So it could have a really big impact. All right, now let's save that and minimize Visual Studio and go back and run again. And we should see a little bit change to our apples. But I want to make sure before I run it, I'm going to double check my Apple prefab and make sure that I have that Apple script associated with it. Is that where we want it? have a script on my apple at all. Well, let's try it without changing anything because they've given us all the instructions, so we'll see what happens. Here goes our apples. Oh, nope, no impact. So they're still flying off past the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to click on my apple prefab and drag my apple script onto that apple prefab. And of course, I can do that either in the inspector area or on the prefab itself. Now let's run it. I'm going to change my value. Now, in my script here in my inspector variables, I'm not seeing that setting. So I'm going to stop this and we'll go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to set this to a smaller value, see if it's having an impact, because it doesn't seem to be. There, they disappear. So now I'm getting them to go away. So notice since that variable is static, we're not seeing its value in the inspector like we do our other public static variables. Yes, sir?
After doing that, my assets don't spawn at all.
Just real quick.
It says the object of type game object has been destroyed, but you are still trying to access it. That's the game object. See the tree.
Okay, so I'm spitting out apples like crazy. Look at this poor thing. It's all stuck, not going anywhere. I'm going to stop it and get this thing done. So let's make some baskets happen. We're almost so done. I want to make sure that we can get all of our pieces put together. Of course, we want to execute or edit, our basket script. So let's check out that script for our basket. Now, looking at our basket, we're going to have quite a few variables here at the top of our class. Let's put in this interesting thing that they have. And we'll see what that does. And then we want some variables. We're going to have a public game object. Basket prefab. It's like Visual Studio said, I know what that is. I'm going to stick it right up here. I don't know what this header thing is. And then I want a public integer named num baskets. And we're going to set that equal to 3. And a public float named basket bottom y. Now we're going to set this bottom for the basket to -14. And our last one is going to be basket spacing y. Now we're going to put this code in our start method. So it's just going to happen when our game starts up and our basket is first instantiated. And we're going to start with a for loop. So let's get this in and then we'll take a look at what's going on here. We're going to control our for loop with an integer named I that we're going to start at 0. And we want to run our loop while I is less than our num baskets variable. And we want to increment I each time we run. For each instance of our loop,
Quick question.
uh-huh,
Is that supposed to be in the basket or apple picker script? I have an apple picker.
it should be in, oh, you're right. Sorry, thank you. Let's move that. I'm going to move my for loop, Control X, and all those variables. Yeah. So I'm going to open my apple picker script. I was just like, yeah, we're going to do our basket. Now in my apple picker script, thank you, Anthony, I'm going to paste that I was getting ready to put in the wrong place, and I'll get my other code. From my basket script. Okay, so move all that to your apple picker. Thank you, sir. And in our apple picker script, in this for loop here that we're working on, we're going to, every time we execute this for loop, we're going to create a game object, and we're going to call it tBasketGo. We're going to use the instantiate command. So it looks like we have part of Visual Studio knowing where we are, but part of it not. Maybe if we restart the machines after we've used it, it'll get better. Now we want to instantiate a game object. And what kind of game object do we want to instantiate? A basket prefab. So that means we're going to make the basket prefab or part of it show up on the screen, or at least be an object. Now we're going to create our vector3 object. Remember, that's our XYZ coordinates, and we're going to call it POS for position. And we're going to say this is a vector3.0, which just initializes a vector3 object to 0, 0, 0. Then we're going to update the Y coordinate of that vector3 object to set our basket bottom Y plus basket spacing times I. And then we're going to set this basket tBasketGo transform position to this position we just created with that vector3 variable. So we could have put basket bottom and basket spacing and all of these different things. We could have those hard-coded in our code, right? And it wouldn't make any difference. But then our game wouldn't be as flexible, because now with these variables set up public, we can access them in the inspector. And as our game gets created, we could access those variables in other scripts in other places too. Now the header part, let's see what they say about that. It added a header to the inspector in Unity so that you can see which variables should be set in the inspector. In later code listings, it will be accompanied by a set dynamically header for variables that are calculated while the game is running. So this header up here is sort of just an interesting comment. Let's save. And then go back to Unity, and we'll see how that comment shows up when we're looking at that script. Now the code creates 3 copies of the basket prefab, and they're going to be spaced out vertically. So they'll just be standing kind of side by side. We want to add this to our main camera. So click on your main camera object in your hierarchy, and let's add the apple picker. Where my poor script is. Now, when I click on my apple picker script, I am seeing my basket prefab here in the inspector that I can set. So I'll just set it there. I'm going to drag that basket prefab onto that variable and see now what I've got. So I should have been able to set that on my main camera. I'm not seeing it quite right. So I'm going to run this and see if everything's okay. Maybe not. No, my apples are spitting out. But my apple picker script is not running, so I want to associate that with my main camera. Now my basket prefab is properly set. I run again. Now my basket is showing up. So that's what they mean by 3 lines of that basket prefab. Now, if I look at everything so far, I'm destroying my apples kind of right as they get to that basket. So I need to move that down just a little bit. You know, I'd move that variable up so that I can make sure they were really getting destroyed. So I don't really want to destroy them until they've kind of gone past that basket. My basket bottom is like -14. So I think if I set my bottom Y position to like -15 instead of that -20, then I should be good. So let me find it. Do what?
Would you put the apple picker script on?
My apples aren't being destroyed.
Right, because we disabled your Apple script because it was making it not work. So your apples shouldn't be. Let's stop this thing. Okay, say what now? Now we put the apple picker script on the main camera, and then we made our basket prefab variable be our basket. And then I want to change my apple. I think I'm going to make this bottom set about 15. So that way it's a little bit below the bottom of my basket. It'll obviously fall past it before I destroy it. Okay, we've got to make our basket move. So let's make our basket move, and then we can catch some apples. We'll have to fix your apple problem then. Yes, sir? Sure. Make sure you're saving as we go. What you got?
Sorry, I know there's one line.
Right here is how you make your baskets. You can take that one basket out of your pile. We're going to all these different places. That's very scary too. Quite interesting.
Oh.
I have to get so close to see it. I'm like, wait a minute.
Have you remade this app? It's kind of like oh, that's for what? That's good. Pretty sad. It needs to be Apple. It needs to be. I know there's some sort of creative layers out of the creating terms of it. So you gotta go to Apple Tree and tell it that it's
Oh,
yeah.
we didn't do it.
What's right?
Yes, sir.
My muted froze. I couldn't close it. Go Unity. Shipping a crazy scroll. I tell you, this is
Okay, we're good. What are you guys doing at the same time? Sure, yes, sir.
I wanted to make sure this was correct. The apple picker, it's supposed to be in the basket. The basket option. As the
Yes. Yes.
and the prefab is the basket.
Yeah, your basket prefab is your basket.
Yeah. Like,
Should be right.
the only reason I was wondering was whenever I click it, I definitely don't see it.
So,
But I think it has to do maybe with the vision. Because I have this. Oh, okay.
My problem now is it's too big to finish, so I don't know. What am I supposed to do?
right?
Yeah, that should be.
Great. And my master's here.
Oh, sure. I think this goes good.
Oh, here we go.
Now, save it. There you go. Now save that before you go back to Unity and it should like it, okay? Okay, let's move it Let's move our basket. Now we want the basket script. Now in Visual Studio, if you haven't used it a lot, is we've opened these different scripts. They've all opened in different tabs. So you should find a tab for your different scripts up here without having to go back and forth. Now after we do this script, Dylan, don't let me forget to do the, that it's a basket. We'll tell it it's a basket. Okay, so let's put this in our basket script first, and then we'll identify to the objects what type of object they are. Now, we want this code to go into our update. So it's going to execute every time we have a screen refresh, not just once at the beginning. So first, we're going to get the current screen position of the mouse. So our position, again, is going to be a vector-3 type object. Remember, whenever we're looking at the position of something in 3D space, we're going to expect a 3-digit position back. We're going to call this mouse pose 2D. We're going to use the input class and ask for the mouse position. Now our mouse, in mouse position, we've got this vector-3 object, but a mouse exists in 2D space, right? Not 3D space. So a mouse only has the XY coordinates, and if we want to figure out what's going on, we have to convert that to a 2D type object. So we're going to take our variable mouse position 2D and the Z position, we're going to like zero it out, if that makes sense. We're going to subtract the camera, our main camera. We're going to use this special system setting or system available variable screen to world point. And we're going to pass it our 2D variable that we want to be interrogated. So basically this screen to world point method of Unity is going to take this mouse position and convert it to a 2D position. The comment here, convert the point from 2D screen space into 3D game world space. Finally, actually do it. We're going to set up another vector-3 that's our mouse position in 3D. Use our main camera again, and Visual Studio is starting to recognize some of the things that I'm typing, so my IntelliSense is starting to get smart enough to know what to do with some of these things. There's my screen to world point, and I want to use my mouse position 2D. Finally, now that I've converted things, we can move the X position of this basket to the X position of the mouse. So we'll move that. We'll set up a new vector-3 variable for our position, and we're going to grab the position of our basket currently, this current basket object. We're going to change its X position to this 3D mouse position, X position that we just got, and then we'll move the basket. Whenever we use the input.mouse position, we are getting a value of screen coordinates. So it's pixels. Z will always be 0 because we're getting a two-dimensional position. The screen to world point then converts the mouse position 2D into 3D space inside the scene, so we can get a good result back. Let's see if it works. We should be able to move our basket, right? So I want to save this. Run. Oh, I got an error. So let's see down here, I see my error says that in my basket script on line 17, can't implicitly convert type Unity engine vector 3 to float. So if we look at line 17, we have our vector 3 mouse position and float. Let's see if there's a, I don't see a typo. Okay, camera main. I do see a typo. So change this code. We should be looking at negative camera.main.transform.position.z. I got down onto that next line of code. Should like that better. Didn't like it any better?
You have a typo, it says transform. Okay.
Transform. Thank you. Any others? Has that got it? I'll move mine out of the way so you guys can still see it.
Try to run it again. Because when I ran mine, the error disappeared. After I changed it.
After you changed it? Yeah. It's letting me click, but it's not doing anything. So I'm going to stop and keep going.
Yeah, let the basket know the basket.
Got to let the basket know it's a basket. That's what we were going to do. You're so good. Okay, so let's let everything know what kind of object it is. Whenever we were setting our physics properties for our project, we used that nice grid. But Dylan's pointed out to me, we did not tell the different objects what type of object they were so that all of that physics stuff would matter. So let's look at our different objects. Our apple tree, if I come over here to our layer, is going to be in the apple tree layer. And yes, I want to change all its children also. Then the apple here, I'll use the template. Our apple is going to be in our apple layer. Our basket should be in our basket layer. Now, when I clicked on the apple tree, I clicked on the one up here in the hierarchy. I'll click on one of my project settings and make sure, oh, I need to fix its layer because I want any instance of an apple tree to be an apple tree. Yes, sir?
For whatever reason, I've got an error for the basket code.
Oh, okay. And we'll figure it out.
It says that vector3.z is inaccessible due to its protection number.
Mine's not. Not to say that yours didn't.
We'll have to. That's something you hear every day.
Fast as apple tree in the west. Okay, so why wouldn't my clicking work? If I look at my basket object, is my script associated with it properly? No. So that could be why I'm not seeing anything happen. So I want to drag my basket script onto my basket prefab so that every basket will be running that script. Let's see if something happens now.
You have the basket prefab to that particular script.
Uh-huh. Stuff everywhere. Oh, now I got an error. I did, but I think I'm gonna have to again. So, go back to the apple tree. Yeah, I got a basket.
My tree is much faster.
Basket.
And it just stops at chemicals.
See, mine doesn't like, well, yeah, line 17. Mine keeps giving me a nowhere exception.
Check it and make sure you didn't have this mouse position 2D in parentheses as a parameter, because I had that originally and it's not supposed to be there. Because I think that's what he was getting, an error like that.
I don't know what it is because I had this working on my computer at home and I just copied the scripts.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know.
Let's see.
I guess it might be a game. On the wire. Oh, that object in this. There's 1.6 is what we just did.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's the same error I'm getting. So let's keep going and see if there's something that's going to fix that as we go. And if not, we'll fight with it. Because we're so close to being done, and then we can fix all our problems, I hope. Ha, ha, ha. All right, so my basket's not cooperating because it doesn't know, I'm thinking, it doesn't know what basket it's working with. It says it doesn't know what object instance to get for us. So as we go, we're going to see if that gets resolved because we're going to add some more to this basket script. So maybe we'll be taking care of it there. So that's what that error is saying. It's like, I don't know which basket you're talking about. So I could run this code, but I'm not sure how. So we're going to add a new method to our basket. In your basket script, after your update method, we want to come down to the closing curly brace for that update method. We want to press enter and add a new method. This method is going to be called onCollision, enter. Now it's going to expect a collision object to be passed to it. And a collision object is going to have information about the collision, like which objects collided and, you know, how different properties about it. So we're going to call that collision object COLL. So that means anything that has to do with the collision will be contained within that collision object. So the first thing we want to do is find out what hit this basket. So we're going to say a game object that we collided with was from the collision object, and it is a game object in the collision object. So our collision object was passed to us. It says, here's the type of object that you collided with. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Now, if what we collided with is equal to an apple, meaning it has that apple tag that we had added in the inspector, then we want to destroy that apple. So now, at least instead of apples piling up on my poor basket that won't move, they should at least get destroyed if they hit my basket. We'll see. Now the on-collision method, or on-collision enter method, is called automatically by Unity whenever a game object collides with another game object. So by us creating this method, we're like integrating ourselves into the Unity runtime to say, here's what should happen when there's a collision of objects. Now I want to save my script here. And I'm going to try to run it, but I'm afraid I'll probably still get this error. Yep, now it's mad at me about line 32.
Says I have an unexpected hit.
You what?
Says I have an unexpected hit.
An unexpected hit?
If.
Oh, let's fix it. Now our collided with game object has properties. And right now this if statement is just comparing the entire game object with that value apple. We don't really want to compare the entire game object. We just want to compare the tag property of that game object to see if it's set to the value of apple. Now, are you being able to run? I was leaving it. Well, it just doesn't like that update method. So I'm just going to comment this out so we can run it and at least see our apples get destroyed. And we'll come back and look at this here in a minute. So I'm just going to comment out that update method. And we'll come back and figure it out. Now everything's happy. Are my apples getting destroyed? They sure are. So at least one thing is working there. All my apples are getting destroyed the way they should be. So we're catching apples a little bit. How's everybody's working? Are your apples getting destroyed if you comment out that other code?
Mine's not working at all.
Nothing. What's the matter? Yeah. Let me know what else you guys do.
Which would be in the back. Does I have it?
Unexpected symbol is mass structure.
Oh,
Operator is a not the type operator. Oh.
So.
First, my underline.
With the apple pickers, is that supposed to be in the camera versus the back?
Apple picture needs to be associated with the main camera.
To again, if you don't mind.
It's not in the no reference, object reference, is not such an instance.
Yeah, I have an idea of today Apple's so much so I get close to it. We're just going to everything like the pre-packaged somewhere. Yeah. No, it's pre-packaged. I'll make sure everything is over here.
Okay.
Apple tree. DVD, yeah. Apple tree's quick over there. Okay. Now try. Yeah, got the apple there. That might get me up. So come back to it. But now try to do it.
This apple tree has the script twice because I added the script.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Okay. I just click on that little right there. So yeah, remove on it. If you drag it to there, you can hit a 5 and then a reply to repeat that. Like if you change your hierarchy and you have a prefab, you just like hit a 5 and it fixes your prefab. And now I try to do I have 2 squares. That's what it is. So fine, I can just do it. Oh, that was good. Yeah, so yeah, that's fine. Yeah. And there's one thing with this story that it's only that one.
We are so close. Let's just do our last little bit and then we can do all of our troubleshooting. Oh man, I forgot ducks. Okay, you don't get any troubleshooting ducks today, but you deserve them. All right, so they say that at this point we would want to duplicate our scene so that we could use it for testing game balance tweaks. I don't think we're quite to that point yet, so I'm going to bypass those steps of duplicating our scene. And the part that we're going to put in now is our GUI and our game management, like making sure that we have a score and things like that. Before we do it, I want to go back to Unity, to the inspector, and I want to make sure that I have all of my, just like I made sure that all my objects were in the right layer, I want to make sure that all my objects are properly tagged, because we did create different tags other than just Apple. So my Apple prefab is properly tagged. My Apple tree, did we create an Apple tree tag? Nah, we only had the Apple one, so that's the only one we needed. We're good. I was afraid maybe there was another one we needed to tag since things were acting a little weird with our basket, but we'll figure that out. Okay, so these last parts we're just gonna add, like I said, a score counter and things like that so we can see how to do that game management control. So this shouldn't be too impacted by other little pieces that might not be working quite right, because we just want to figure out how to do this before we troubleshoot. So game management makes it feel more like a real game. We can get everything working the right way. So from our Unity menu, we want to choose Game Object UI Text. And if you look here, you could create all the different kinds of objects that we're used to seeing on user interface screens. So you really could create your whole application with Unity if you wanted to. Okay, so here's my text object now. I have a text object. Notice it's within a canvas. Because it's the first UGUI, or Unity Graphical User Interface element to be added to the scene, it added the canvas. The canvas is a two-dimensional board on which the GUI will be arranged. So if you look at your scene pane, you should see a very large 2D box extending from the origin out very far in the X and Y directions. Double-click on the canvas in the hierarchy to zoom out and see the whole thing. I'm going to try it here. So you can see where our canvas is, great big giant billboard in our game. Stop it. All right. Now we want to set this thing up the way we would like. So blah, 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 blah. You can also click the 2D button on top of the scene pane to switch to a two-dimensional view, and that can make working with the canvas easier. So let's do that. There's our 2D view. Now, the other game object that was added to the top level of the hierarchy is the event system. Do you see it over here in your hierarchy screen? The event system is what allows buttons, sliders, and other interactive GUI elements that you build in a Unity GUI to work. Now, we're not going to really be using any of those in this prototype, but be aware that's what that piece does. Now, as a child of the canvas, you'll see a text game object. Double-click on the text game object in the hierarchy to zoom in on it. So we see our text now. Now the text color is black, which might be difficult to see over the background of your game scene. So all of those kinds of things you need to be concerned about. Select the text game object in the hierarchy and use the inspector pane to change its name to high score. So instead of being text, let's name this thing high score. So now we have basically set up a new variable but it's a text type variable instead of something like we set up within Visual Studio. So we've got our high score set. Now let's make our high score variable. I'm going to try to follow all of these settings that they have for us. So whenever you're looking at Inspector, notice that it's in the UI layer, so it's a little different than our other layers. Let's set our transform position. We want our X to be -10, our Y to be -6, and our Z to be 0. We want our width to be 256, our height to be 32, and then we want to click on this, the raw edit mode button. Now, some other things that we want to set are anchors. I'm going to expand that anchors area so that I see those. And we want the minimum and maximum to be 1. And notice as you change that first set, the minimum, it kind of messes up your transform positions on the top. But then when you change the maximum to the same value, it resets everything. Now, we'd also like our pivot values to be 1. Our rotation of all 0 is good, and our scale of all 1s is good. Now, down here in the text area, this is actually the text that's going to be displayed by our text control, and we want it to start with a value of 1,000. So type 1,000 in there. Our font style, let's go ahead and make it bold so it'll show up. They want the font size to be 28. I want it to really show up a lot.
Where do we type it out?
Oh,
You see it in that box? Perfect. Now, other than that, we have horizontal overflow set to wrap, vertical overflow set to truncate, and we want to set a color. They used like a white, so use something really light. For that text color so that we can see it. Now the text thing, they in the verbiage, they want it to be a little bit different. Instead of just having the number 1,000, they want it to actually say high score, space 1,000. Change their mind, so we'll see how that works. So once we've got all those settings set for that high score text, let's copy it. So in the hierarchy screen, we want to right click on our high score variable and copy or duplicate, actually. That will be easier for us. Now let's select our new high score sub 1 and change its name to score counter. Now our score counter, I think they want everything set the same. $28.10, yeah, that should be right. We copied everything, so we should have the same settings. The only thing that we need to worry about is making sure that this R button is clicked in our rect transform. Now, what we wanted to see here, first of all, was that these GUI objects really are a lot different than a standard Unity object. We work with them a little bit differently, but they're going to be really helpful for us. So we want to create a scoring system that counts a score every time we catch an apple. So we're going to put this within our basket class. So I'm going to go to Visual Studio and find our basket script. And found my basket. I'm going to make sure that I'm in my basket script. Everything looks good. Now we want to create some variables, and they're going to use that header thing. Header set dynamically. And then this way, when we see these in Unity, in the inspector, we know how the variables are set. We're going to create just one variable, a public text called score GT. Not super familiar with these stamps in C#. They're usually outside of the class, and it's making Visual Studio be a little bit weird, but that's all right. Okay, so for in our start method, we should be able to start out creating a game object, and let's call it score EO. Now for our game object, we're going to find our variable, our text variable. So we're going to use the game object.find method, and what we want to find is the score counter. Yeah, probably. Hope to say, we're going to put some Sharpie on you. I'll put in a comment, find a reference to the score counter. Now the next thing that we're going to do is get the text from that score counter game object. And we're going to get the text by saying we want to set our score GT variable equal to this score game object that we just created. And we want to use that game object to get a component of itself. And what we want, I'm going to put within opening, closing, greater than, equal, or less than braces. We want to get the text. Now some really weird syntax, because kind of C#2 or advanced syntax, we're using, whenever we have the greater than, less than brackets, that's a generic. So our get component method for a game object will take any sort of value within that generic setting, any kind of component property that it knows about, and it'll try to get that component for us. So in this case, we're looking for the text property of that component. That should be the words that we put in there. Now let's set the starting number of points to 0. We're going to say, hey, in our score GT game object, set the text property equal to 0. Now we need to, if that all looks good, has everybody got that? I'm going to click save. We're going to do just a little bit more in our basket script before we're done. We want to go to our on collisions method. And right now we are just destroying the apple. Whenever that happens, we really want to say that they got a point, right? Because we just destroyed an apple. So we want this new code to go inside this if statement body. So it needs to be within these open and closing curly braces here of this if statement. So whenever we destroy an apple, let's add some points. First, we're going to parse the text of the score GT into an int because we're trying to use this as a number, and we know that we made it a string because it had double quotes around it. So we're going to create a variable called score, and we're going to do int.parse on our score GT text, which we just set to 0 in our start method. So that should start out as 0. Let's add some points for catching an apple. You know that plus equal does the exact same thing as score equals score plus 100. Now let's convert the score back to a string and display it. So score gt.text equals this score integer that we've created to string. We have to convert it back into a string to put it into that text. So we took the text, converted it to an integer, added to it, and now we're just putting it back into the text so that we can display it. Now, if you've got it, let's go ahead and save and run and see if you see your score.
The type or namespace text could not be found. Are you missing engine.ui using directed?
Maybe we are. Let's see. So up at the top on your basket script, let's add that using, was it in uppercase? Do you notice? Okay, cool. Let's see if that helps us.
UI does not exist in the namespace Unity. Are you missing an assembly reference? What does that mean?
You should use Unity engine instead of simply, I think.
He probably says it in the book. Let's check real close.
Unity engine instead of Unity.ui.
Unity engine.
Unity engine.
Oh, okay.
Cool. See if that's better. My scores are on top of each other. How about yours?
My apples owe that, so my apples don't get the score. Change the wrong for the score. You tried helping me with it earlier. And
Uh-huh.
figure out why.
It's just not going to do it for you, huh? Now you can move your score counter down just a little bit positionally if you want to, so that it's not right on top of your other object. See how that works. You're just making it so mad. I don't know why. I wonder if that computer, that's one of the ones they were trying on. I wonder if they messed it up. I almost went down far enough. We'll fix them all. Okay. Now I know everybody's got some different issues. We have about an hour. So if you want to take a break for a second, let's do that. Get all woke up, get something to drink, all that great stuff. So we can kind of finish. We just have a few little pieces to add here and there. Like right now, we have a problem with our basket. But besides that, we want to add, you know, so that our high score gets updated. And we want to make sure that our basket disappears and a few little minor things like that to be all done. You make sure here. There's some really good things that we have. So I know we have some various issues. So get up, move around for a couple of minutes, and then you'll figure it out when you get back. So come back at 9:30. That's not a huge long break. It's hot in here. I have to get you tested for that. What's that thing? I was looking at symptoms of it, and I basically have it. But as long as I don't get too tired, I'm okay. But I could go to sleep anywhere. I sort of check your thyroid, check your iron levels. Iron levels are a big one. Well, next week is you guys' presentations. So just have your first game ready. And that should be. Sure. Oh yeah, that's fine. So that's all. Next weekend will be next week's our presentations, and we'll try to get you guys to be like under 10 minutes. Just yell if you have any questions, because we won't see each other again. I wish we were. I kind of wish we got to meet more than once a week.
Yeah, I really wish. Yeah.
It's all right.
Sorry about
That's all right. I was too tired. should.
Was it a typo?
I had, Alliance or collision.
I didn't
Is
look
that
for a
method?
typo. Don't you
What
want
I was
typos?
saying is that if Visual Studio and Unity were connected properly, you would have gotten some sort of error or something, but instead it was just like, and we don't have to use the override statement, and that would have made it show up too. If I could only the C# so you have to do the override collision, nothing like that. Since it's a Unity life cycle. Yes.
Okay, so there's both of those. And these. Even the. I think that's.
I don't know if we need your apple tree, just apple picker and basket, I think.
I wonder what's going on the screen.
Well, it looks right.
Yeah.
So is it? Let's check your apple tree.
It looks the same. Apple trees. That looks right.
Does it look right? So then if you look at your,
Basket. So you just make it.
where's our apple tree script associated? There it is. Okay. So when you click on your apple tree, do you see your apple tree script?
Yes.
Did you have your apple prefab in there?
I did not.
That's probably what it's mad about. Let's see if that takes care of it. We have pieces everywhere.
Okay, now apples fall.
Yay!
And they're not too down like before. However, it still spawns under baskets. I don't have an apple tree.
Wow, you're getting a bunch of baskets.
No, no.
Because you got so many baskets.
And we have this score counter. What do you mean? Of course. The only thing
Do you guys see something?
Apple picture script, he's missing quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Let me, I think it's printed out back there for him.
No. Oh, yeah.
This is Riley's.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so make yours like that.
It looks exactly like that.
Does it good?
You got this, you got a start method, and then you got an apple display method, right?
I think I see the problem.
Yay.
And text is color is what? That's all about.
You have to look at my. I can print it off.
Yeah, straight method, I think it's way. Is that capital, so it's that. Where's the straight method? Plus it's Riley?
In your basket.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have it.
No, you're just destroying it, the fact that apple destroyed method. It's called.
name. Let me see.
Only that there's no logo on mine, my back.
Okay, everybody feeling good enough to move on a little bit here? Let's try. We're gonna make a list because this is really important when we're working with games. So we're gonna make a list of objects. Let me get back to it here. So what we want to do is make a list of the different kind of baskets that we have so we don't get a whole bunch of them if we've seen that problem. So I want to go to our apple picker script. And in your apple picker, first of all, let's go up to the top and set up some additional variables. Right now we have 4. Do you need us to wait? Are you figuring something out? You're all right? Okay. Okay, so we have these 4 variables. Let's add a new one. I want to add a list. So this is a special type of variable that gives us a repeating list of elements. Now, when we create a list, again, we use the greater than, less than brackets to specify what data type our list is going to be. In this list, it's going to be a list of game objects. We want to call this list basket list. So in case you didn't notice, it's going to be a list of basket game objects. And that's what we're going to be carrying inside this list. So we can make it anything we wanted, but when a lot of times when we're creating a game, we'll have a whole list of objects that we run through to decide which one is the furthest or which one is the closest or, you know, which one is yellow or whatever the case may be of what we're looking for. Now, in our start method for our baskets, we're going to add a new line of code before the code we have. So this is going to go right under the opening curly brace for our start method. And we want it to be a basket list. Our basket list.
You spelled bacon.
Bacon. So we want our basket list to be instantiated as a new list of game objects. So this will be kind of repeating that code just because C# requires that. So it's a new list, game object, not objects. Now, after we create our list, our for loop, the way we have it is just fine, but we want to add one line of code to the end of our for loop. So it's going to go inside those opening, closing curly braces for our for loop. And this is going to say basket list dot add. And we just want to add this basket game object that we're currently working with to our list of baskets.
We need to.
Now we've got our list here. We're going to make up baskets. We want to take baskets away, basically. We're going to make the game more challenging. So we're going to do that in our apple destroyed method. So that should be, where am I? In our apple picker. That's where I am. Oh, we're going to have to create one. We'll have to create one. Now in our apple picker here, it's kind of controlling everything. Our start method is going to create this list of baskets, and we're going to create a new method for whenever an apple is destroyed. So let's come down after our update. Again, we want to be right on that closing curly brace of our update method and press enter to create our new method. This one we're going to call public void apple destroyed. Now in this method, we're going to destroy all of the falling apples, not just the one that we just had a collision with. First, we're going to see which basket we're working with. Now to do that, we're going to set up an integer. Our integer is going to be called basket index. We're going to set it equal to the count of baskets in our basket list dot count minus 1. Another typo there. Now that we know what our last basket is, we're going to get a reference to it. And this is what we're missing in that one script that's giving us trouble. The code that they gave us accesses the main camera directly without accessing it as a game object. So that's why we're having trouble with that one. So we'll have to figure out what's going on there. Now for this code, we're going to create an object again called tBasket geo for game object. And we're going to say, looking at the basket list, at that last basket, create a game object based on that one. Now we want to remove that basket and destroy its game object. So we can use our basket list and remove the item at the position we had saved off. And finally, we can destroy that game object. So whenever we first created our basket game objects, we did it in a for loop, and we said we were creating 3 of them. And that's how we ended up with those. They're just out there as game objects now. In Unity, they're not associated with anything really. So in this script, what we're saying is, because an apple was destroyed, we're going to run this method when an apple is destroyed. Because an apple was destroyed, take all of these baskets and put them in a list object. Then look at that list object and tell us, what are the game object characteristics of this thing? We'd be looking at the last one. We have to do all this work going back and forth to find out that information about this game object. It could have been saved at the very beginning when we first created them, right? But then we'd have this potentially large list that we would have to pass around to all of our different scripts. The way we're doing it here, we're just saying, oh, there's these whole bunch of game objects out there. I'm just going to go get them all and put them in a list, and then use that list to find out the information that I need to find out to be able to destroy that one so that I can get rid of it. So we're having to do a little bit of work there to get that taken care of. And yes, we could have put them all in the list when they were created in the first place and then just destroyed the last one in the list. But that would have added to the resource load of our game. Now, we haven't actually called this apple destroyed anywhere, so it's not doing anything yet. So we'll be using it here in just a second. We want to make our high score work too. We're kind of doing all of our last pieces. So let's go back to Unity and create a new C# script. And we're going to call this one high score. Now I want to edit our high score script. And we're going to create a variable. And it's going to be a static variable. Again, static meaning there's only going to be one instance of this variable for our game. So it's kind of like the elephant in the room. We only have one of them, and we're going to use it when we want to update that high score so we don't have to worry about it changing. Oops, I should have made it 1,000 now. I was being low. Now, we only want to check it in our update method. In our update, we're going to use a text property called GT. And we're going to say whatever component we're working with right now, get its text property. Get component. Then that GT variable that we just created, we're going to set its text property equal to high score plus our score. Now, a couple of things about our variable. Beside it being static, we made it public. So that means we can access this score variable from other scripts outside of this high score script. So that makes it something that we can use in other places. Oh, let me get it. There you go. Sure. Got it? So our last little pieces, again, I want to go now to our basket script. We jump around, I know. And in our basket script, we want to find that method we created for the collisions. Remember how we said if we collided with an apple, we were going to destroy that apple. We also added to our score there, right? Because we were making sure that we can add to our score. So we just need to add one more thing, and I'm going to put it at the bottom of the method. And that's going to be tracking our high score. So if our score is greater than our high score, .score, which remember is the variable name we made in our high score script that's public and static. There's only one of them in the game, and it's public, so we should be able to read it from this script. if our new score is greater than that one, let's update that one to be our new score, so that now the high score is our new score. Now let's run. I want to save all this. We've made quite a few changes, and I know they're just little ones, but they're everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. Let's run it. Oops, I've got a compile error. Text could not be found. So where do we need to go? Our high score script. And in our high score script, I need to add that using Unity Engine .ui. Now, is that our only error after all of that work? Of course not. Null reference.
List does not exist in the current context.
Yeah, it's the same error that we.
Basket 30. Yeah, because I commented mine back, or uncommented out, so let me fix that. In our basket. Let me fix that. I'll comment out my update again, because I was working on it while you guys were taking a break. Try to figure out why we're having trouble there.
You didn't say it.
I need my tree to go further so I can. My high score is going up, but it's not, it's not updating that variable. So we have a few more changes to make, but at least I'm running now. I got rid of all my errors.
You set your speed.
Yeah, I set my speed higher so I could move around better. All right, so that looks like some things are working. We have a few more pieces to add. Now, whenever we destroy an apple, let's put that in. I want to be in the apple picker script. And whenever we're looking at our apple destroyed script here, we've removed a basket. We want to add at the very bottom, if our basket list count of baskets, how many baskets are in our list, if that equals 0, then we're going to actually use the Unity Scene Manager to reload our scene. So it would be like starting all over. And the scene we want to reload is our scene, which should be underscore scene underscore 0. So the scene manager is a controlling process that's going on within Unity, and we can access the methods in Scene Manager to find out like what scene we're in, change scenes, build scenes dynamically, do things like that. So in this case, we're just reloading it. Kind of a clunkety way to say it's starting over, but it gives us a little bit of experience working with Scene Manager, and we can see what's happening. Now, the other thing that we have to do to make this work is add another using clause. And they want it, let's see if I can get this right. We need using Unity Engine dot scene management. Now, if you want to save, make sure that that's working. If you can get your basket objects to disappear, What's that?
Mine keeps saying no overload permitted after destroy takes one argument. Mine's saying the same thing.
Oh, good. Where are you seeing that?
You don't need to overload it.
Uh-uh.
Apple destroy does not exist in the front. So just destroy.
Let's check here.
Should be scene manager, right? Management. No, scene management doesn't work either.
Scene manager, scene management. Let's see. Let's
I
find
think
it.
I know what it is.
What is it?
If you scroll down to Apple Destroy.
Uh-huh. Where am I? There it is.
Because, yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I said Apple Destroy. It's destroy.
Destroyed.
Yeah, I said
Mm-hmm.
it was. Okay, so it's manager, not manager or management.
Right. Scene manager.
Finally, it's working.
Is it working? Yay.
But oh wait, never. Okay,
It doesn't destroy baskets if it doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't. Got it?
What Unity did not see, are you trying to down using tape? I never liked scene manager.
Doesn't like scene manager?
It doesn't like where scene manager.
And you got you're using Unity Engine.scene management.
Like,
So the using is scene management and the code is scene manager.
Yeah, I got those both. Not one word.
Mad at you?
Manager. Just yes.
The last thing that they have in the text for us is project is to save the high score in the settings in Unity. So I'm going to leave that to you guys, but I'm going to try to download the final code. Let me do that from our textbook so that I can send it to you so you can see what kind of little differences we might have. The concern that I have is that area where our basket is not moving properly. Let's see.
For some reason, when we're trying to set the mouse position 2D.Z, it's not. That's what's coming
Well,
off.
yeah, it's not, because it's not being able to find the main camera.
Yeah.
But our camera is named main camera.
Is the main camera in the basket?
Try tagging it as the main camera. See if that matters. Do what?
Oh, yeah, it works.
Does that work? That's what we were missing. Okay. I'll send him an email and say, hey,
What do we gotta do?
We-
Tag the main camera as the main camera.
and then you can use that code. That's what we were needing. All right.
Oh, it is on tag. That
Now,
makes
can you
sense.
click on your
Why
basket?
is it automatically on tag? No,
Yeah, that doesn't-
Okay, that's better.
now that fixes everything too.
That's better.
Will disappear.
Ugh.
Notice
Oh, my
that.
basket's on disappeared.
Does yours disappear? Okay, help each other, fix them. Some of you in the back come up towards front. Let me find the actual code to print out of everything, because I think that we're in good shape. Close, but I don't think my Apple destroying is right yet.
Yeah. Okay, you're missing stuff in your Apple script. Yep. You're not calling the Apple destroy method.
That's what we're missing. Where is that?
In your
Here.
Apple script, doesn't it update?
Get everybody to do that. Okay, everybody go look at your Apple script. And in the update,
Under destroy, there should be an Apple picker, and you want to make that AP script equal camera.main, the component Apple picker. You may call it AP script first, before you equal it.
like that.
Yeah, then that equals camera.main, not the component. And type Apple picker. And parentheses. And then after that, you gotta do AP script on Apple story. That's when you call it Apple story.
Like that.
Destroy. And that should be it.
Now that is calling our Apple destroyed script from our Apple picker script. So the reason it's a little complicated is it's saying, I want to access this Apple picker script. You can find it if you look at the main camera and the components on the main camera, you'll find that Apple picker script. Once you find it, I want to run the Apple destroyed method in that script. So that's a way that we can cross over. Thank you, sir. I knew it was missing and I just couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, I missed it. Okay, let's save. Now we should have apples disappearing. We'll get it all working right here at the last minute to keep your stress high.
Apple picker is back, is that just grab and destroy?
There goes my baskets, and then I restarted all the way.
Now the high score doesn't.
Yeah, you sure did. Did you call it correctly? So that's the Apple. You didn't put score.
No definition for Apple destroy.
Make sure that method is named that. Where did we add our high score script? Go back to that spot. Oh, I will.
I mean, we just need to tie the high score to like the main camera or something.
I'm thinking so. Yeah, it's not updating. So let me find it because I think that they didn't tell us.
Got it, thank you.
Now make it miss an apple. So just show you that. There you go.
Thank you.
Keep that in mind.
So do you think, let's just add our high score to our main camera. I'm not seeing anywhere where they say to, it didn't work. Does it need to go to your basket? The high score.
Click on it.
Oh, attach it to the high score game object. There it is. Okay, if your high score is not working, grab your high score script and attach it to this high score text game object. Yes, it should. See what it does.
Is it supposed to also say the high score 1,000 at the same time?
Uh-huh.
The high school, when you get school, gets over 1,000 now.
My score still looks weird, but that's the least of my worries.
How come the high score is set at a base of 1,000?
Yeah, your school is not a.
Do I?
How come it's set at a minimum of 1,000? Should it be 0 until you?
Yeah, they just set it as 1,000 to be like higher than what you started out with, so you could see the
If you use your high
difference.
score, will it save it?
That's what the last little part is. So
The score of that other side of the screen.
you would have to change your position X.
Oh, yeah, you're right, you're right. Thank you so much.
And move it over someplace else. Oh yeah, now my score's not on top of my high score finally. Okay. Everybody looking good. Look at these last few minutes. I thought you guys didn't have time. Sorry,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Oh, do capital C, the camera. Make sure you got a capital C there. Keep that.
Does it look like that?
Thank you.
Yeah, you can remember if you're and call them. Sometimes it's just you to copy a name, Facebook, they don't type it. That's what I tend to do myself. Like, type it from a lot of times. Like, typing it in. Really,
I love how this thing, I love how this thing actually shows you.
backwards and sideways.
So that way you can see. I had it cracking on this computer, but it disappeared.
Did it disappear?
Uh,
It kind of disappeared when they fixed
Yeah,
Visual
look, I-
Studio and stuff.
Oh, wait, there it is.
Uh-huh.
You attach a script to it, right? So look at main camera.
The way.
Where you-
It's like this,
where you-
for whatever reason, that takes away too.
It was working before I done this.
That first time.
Scene 0 cannot be played.
Yeah.
You're not even on scene 3, we got scene 5. So that's why it's not loading scene 0.
I tried to change 0.5.
I just want to.
Yeah, just try to rename that scene 0. Maybe that'll fix it.
And then that way it's only the next box.
Yeah.
There we go.
Visual Studio kind of saved my community. Not working.
None. So we should
Closing
take
it
that
off.
to that bag.
Alrighty, don't miss. Here it comes. Here it is.
Oh, I know.
You can't miss.
It doesn't have a script attached to it.
Oh.
Tell me what else.
Right, explore.
How do you reset?
Yeah.
Are you just having one? Are you having two baskets disappear?
They all work.
Did you have somebody else?
Well, what if you don't have it all screwed
Like you do this. I haven't really used,
Is that just one?
used Netbeans quite a bit. Yeah, I
Everything's
did.
everywhere.
So I just kept using it.
Score where was the score?
Like, what would you do with this?
It was supposed
Oh.
Yeah, that makes it different.
Just like if I draw it.
You might have a special community install, you think? Running super slow, so we can run two statements.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I had the
So
newest
yeah,
one,
something's
I
going on.
replaced it.
They might
Oh,
also
it's
be
one more.
weird on the Somebody should go.
These are all immaculate replaced.
Don't worry about it too much.
Download all my pictures.
You guys, I know you have a lot to do to get it in for us by next week. Remember, I'm realistic in my expectations. So I have no problem with you taking this one and making your graphics different so that you're close. But I do want you to really work on it and try to make sure you're understanding where all these pieces are and how everything's fitting together. Because that's where we are right now. The next time I'll expect, oh my God, an unbelievable.
So we're just making a game, and I
I
say,
think I'm gonna shoot
Again.
for a full looping for it.
Yeah, just a game.
Bronze cloud.
And you're gonna present it to everybody else next time. Have less than 10 minutes each because we don't want it to be too long. So it won't be a big long presentation. Then at the end, we'll try to work out any problems anyone's having with their game. And that's usually what have a great week. I'll see you next week. I wish I got to see you more. We get it all done.
So now it's showing changes.
Yes.
So it's like,
Yes.
so initial.
Could Apple picker update or something like that, or completed project or whatever you want.
so,
Let's see.
because it says game story and game pitch, we just, so the presenting is the pitch and the story is the game itself? Okay, so I read that, I was thinking like I had to break this
Well,
game
I know I'd
down.
like you to have some information in there, like your storyboard, basic
Okay.
premise about the game, that kind of thing, so that you kind of have your thoughts together for how you're gonna present it, but you don't have to, you know, create any narrative or anything like that.
Okay.
Just your real short description of your game, target audience. that kind of stuff. So it'll take you a little while to do that.
Okay.
But not.
I made sure I got a head start on that one.
Great,
So-
great.
So I'm on to the big part of the development right now.
Good, I can't wait to see them.
Question, do you know much about SQL?
Some,
Do you know anything about stored procedures? I'm working with Tiffany, and she had me working on a stored procedure. And we're getting an error for, what's the error say? Could not drop object because of foreign key constraint. But I gotta like maybe drop the child table first, the one that's being referencing the foreign key.
Normally you do have to drop the child before you can drop the parent.
Okay, because see in the stored procedure what is for her SQL class.
uh-huh.
So what she can go in and it checks if for that table if it's null, and if it's not null. If it's not null, it deletes it and it creates a new one. And it won't do it because that foreign key constraint. So dropping the child should
Yeah,
first.
But then you have to recreate it and recreate
Yeah, well, it's recreating everything right after, but I know the creation order matters, but the dropping order,
It's
I
like
didn't
that
wasn't
opposite.
sure.
Opposite.
It is, yeah. You drop the child, then you
Okay,
It's kind of like, yeah, just flip it around.
all right, I appreciate it.
Awesome.
That's how I remember it.
Stuff done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not very good at SQL, so I'm a little struggling.
I found one last semester that I really liked, a stored procedure that I set up as a trigger in the database, and I hope I can find it again. But that when we created new database diagrams, just automatically copy them to every.
Okay, yeah, see, she made a C# program, so she can just use stored procedure, automatically create the database. And I made another stored procedure, so it creates the user and a login. And everybody's having an issue with that.
Having fun time. Yay, that sounds great.
So how do we?
So you measure performance metrics. I don't know what that is, because that was from like the Skills USA contest.
Okay.
And so I think we're going to say for our first game, that if the machine doesn't crash, oh, I bet we need this one. You think it's these?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't.
I don't think so. I'm just like, oh, geez, this is not what I wanted. That's not what I was thinking at all. And I'm like, ew.
Visual Studio with the.
That's what I was thinking it was.
Especially since it's not. We're not
Yeah.
running in Visual Studio, so we don't see the performance
Here's what we want.
tab open up. Yeah.
I'll get this all printed out, but for this game, I want you to just say that
It runs.
it runs responsibly within the hardware. You know, I'm going to find out. I'm going to print out this one because it looks intense, but I don't want you guys to have to do a bunch of things. And I was hoping that more of that stuff would work. We'll see.